1202. It was not a countdown. It was not a fuel reading. And it was not a code Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin expected to see while descending toward the moon. At roughly 33,000 feet above the lunar surface, the Apollo guidance computer inside the lunar module Eagle displayed a program alarm. Armstrong looked down at the panel and called Houston. Program alarm. It's a 1202. For a few seconds, no one inside Eagle knew whether the computer was warning them about a temporary overload or telling them the landing had to end. They were already committed to the descent. The engine was firing. The moon was rising into view beneath the windows, and the first attempt to land human beings on another world had just been interrupted by a number almost no one inside the spacecraft could explain. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin separated Eagle from the command module Columbia and began the final stage of a mission years in the making. Michael Collins remained in lunar orbit above them. Below Eagle was the Sea of Tranquility, the planned landing region chosen for its relatively smooth terrain. Ahead of the crew was a powered descent, lasting a little more than 12 minutes. The spacecraft had to reduce its speed, control its angle, measure its altitude, guide itself toward the landing area, and preserve enough fuel to reach the surface safely. Much of that work depended on the Apollo guidance computer. The computer received information from the spacecraft's navigation system and landing radar. It calculated where Eagle was, how fast it was moving, and how the engine should steer the vehicle. It also displayed information to the crew through a keyboard and screen called the DSKY. The machine was small by the standards of the computers that supported the mission from Earth, but it was not simple. Its software had been designed to manage several jobs at once and to decide which tasks mattered most. That ability was about to become the reason the landing continued. The descent had already demanded constant attention. Eagle was traveling slightly farther downrange than expected, and the crew was monitoring differences between the altitude predicted by the guidance system and the altitude measured by radar. Then the alarm appeared. 1202. Armstrong repeated the number. Aldrin repeated it too. Then Armstrong asked Houston for a reading on the alarm. Inside Mission Control, the question moved through a chain of people trained to make decisions quickly. Charlie Duke was the capsule communicator, the person speaking directly to the astronauts. But Duke could not decide by himself whether the alarm was safe. The call went to Steve Bales, the guidance officer responsible for monitoring Eagle's navigation computer. Bales depended on specialists supporting him from a back room. Among them was 25-year-old computer engineer Jack Garman. Before the mission, Garman had prepared a list of possible computer alarms. When the number 1202 appeared, he recognized it as an executive overflow. The computer was receiving more work than it could complete in the available time. That sounded like a failure. But the most important question was not whether the computer was overloaded. The question was what it did next. The Apollo software had been built around priorities. When too many tasks arrived at once, the computer did not attempt to complete all of them equally. It protected the jobs required to keep the spacecraft flying, discarded or delayed work of lower importance, restarted, and continued. It was still steering the descent engine. It was still running the guidance calculations needed for landing. The alarm was not saying that the computer had stopped. It was saying that the computer had recognized an overload and was recovering from it. Garman understood that. Bales made the call. The landing could continue. Duke transmitted the answer to Eagle. "Roger. We got you. We're go on that alarm." The response arrived only seconds after Armstrong had asked what the code meant. But the problem was not finished. Less than a minute later, another 1202 alarm appeared. Again, Mission Control told the crew to continue. As Eagle descended, the computer displayed another code. This time, it was 1201. The number was different, but the underlying problem was similar. Houston answered again. "We're go. Same type. We're go." 5 computer program alarms occurred during the powered descent. Each one forced the same decision to be made again. Was the computer still completing its essential work? Were the alarms appearing too rapidly? Could the guidance system continue to fly the spacecraft safely? For Armstrong and Aldrin, the alarms carried another cost. Their attention had been pulled inside the cockpit at the moment they needed to begin evaluating the ground outside. Armstrong later explained that concern about the computer alarms delayed his ability to study the landing area. When he finally looked carefully through the window, Eagle was approaching rough terrain near a large crater. The computer was guiding them toward an area filled with rocks and boulders. Armstrong took more direct control and flew forward, searching for a clearer place to land. Now the alarms were no longer the only problem. The spacecraft was moving beyond its planned landing point. The descent engine continued to burn fuel. Aldrin called out altitude and velocity, while Armstrong watched the surface. Mission Control announced that 60 seconds of fuel remained. Dust began to spread beneath Eagle as the engine exhaust struck the ground. The surface became harder to see. Then Aldrin saw the shadow of the spacecraft. A probe beneath one of the landing pads touched the moon. Contact light. Armstrong shut down the engine. For the first time since the alarms began, the computer no longer had to guide Eagle toward the surface. Charlie Duke watched the telemetry in Houston and spoke. "We copy you down, Eagle," Armstrong answered. "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." For people listening on Earth, the first lunar landing was largely an experience of voices, numbers, pauses, and radio noise. They heard 1202 without seeing the computer that displayed it. They heard Houston say, "Go," without seeing the people who had reached that decision. And they heard the landing confirmed in words before the world saw the astronauts step onto the surface. Only later could the alarm be explained in full. Excess data associated with the rendezvous radar system was repeatedly interrupting the guidance computer during the descent. The condition consumed processing time, but the software behaved as its designers intended. It restarted while preserving the highest priority tasks. It allowed less important work to fall away. Instead of failing silently, the computer announced the overload and continued flying. That is the central contradiction of the 1202 alarm. It looked like evidence that the computer could not complete the landing. In reality, it was evidence that the computer was protecting the landing. The machine did not help save the mission by working without error. It helped save the mission by failing in a controlled way. But software alone was not enough. The alarm still had to be understood by people. Jack Garman had studied the possible codes. Steve Bales trusted the technical judgment and passed the recommendation forward. Charlie Duke delivered the answer clearly to the crew. Armstrong and Aldrin accepted the call and continued descending while handling the problems still ahead of them. The decision was distributed across the spacecraft, Mission Control, and the engineers supporting the main room. No single person landed Eagle, and no single machine did either. The mission succeeded because the warning moved through a system in which preparation, software design, and human judgment met within a few seconds. The record of that moment survives in NASA's air-to-ground transcripts, mission reports, audio recordings, and the Apollo Lunar Surface Journal. The exact words remain preserved beside the times at which they were spoken. Program alarm. It's a 1202. Give us a reading on the 1202 program alarm. And then the answer that allowed the descent to continue. We'll go on that alarm. Today, 1202 is remembered as one of the most famous computer warnings in the history of spaceflight. But it was never intended to become famous. It was a technical message created for a crew and a control room. A short code reporting that the computer had more work than it could perform. For a few seconds above the moon, that code separated two possible histories. In one, Eagle aborted and returned to orbit. In the other, the descent continued. The number appeared. Houston answered. The computer kept flying, and 1202 became the alarm that did not stop Apollo 11.